All right, we are live on the Station 8 podcast. I am so honored to welcome Ryan Bartlett to the show. Welcome.
Thank you, Preston. It's a pleasure to be here.
And I, as part of this podcast, am really getting the opportunity to dive in deeper with just amazing people I've met along my spiritual awakening and spiritual path in the last few years. And I got the opportunity to meet Ryan at Fit for Service, and I believe you performed on stage at the end of the summit.
Yeah, I sang my song "Divorced" in front of the whole crew, and
Hmm.
it was synchronistic because that song I wrote like 2 weeks before that, and I was gonna sing "I Like It Raw," the shirt I got on right here, because it's always a
Yeah,
favorite when I do that in person. It's always fun, and that's what my ego really wanted to do. Then we did the 1 hour breath work, and it's like, oh, I gotta do divorce to just
yeah.
heal myself and also help other people heal, because there's so many other people going through relationship issues and divorce. And it was the most powerful ovation I've ever received. It was intense.
Oh, it was so amazing, and we're definitely going to dive into that experience and that story a lot more today, and that's why I'm so happy to have you on, to get that opportunity to dive into how magical the whole summit and experience of Fit for Service and what that community is really building and opening space for. And I just want to open our intention up with being completely heart centered and vulnerable and shining light on the darkness, just like we talked. You're just opened up with synchronicity and divorce, and that's a lot of darkness and density, and those are all things that I've had to walk through, and a lot of people that I've connected with through this heart coherence experience, heart-centered community that we are all we've been connected through. Um, is that darkness, is that we all have similar experiences with different details going on there. And before we dive in to that more deeply, Ryan asked me before we dropped in to record, to share a guided visualization. And I think meditation is one of the biggest keys that I have found in my journey, and a tool that you can do anywhere. So I'm super excited to have Ryan share some of his magical visualizations and meditation practices with us, because those are really a gift, to be shared. And if you're driving while you're listening to this, make sure you're in a grounded place, because Ryan's got a magical voice, and he's gonna probably drop us right into the theta state in that nice outer body experience. So let's make sure we're being safe and in our masculine groundedness while we dive through our feminine insides. So
Mm,
please go ahead and drop us in, Ryan. Thank you.
beautiful. Thank you so much for that incredible intro. All right, let's put our hands on our chest and take a few deep breaths first. So a deep inhale, exhale, inhale, exhale. One more, inhale, exhale. Do you remember how life began? It was many, many moons ago, 500 million years ago. The spark was lit, the dawn of creation. The earth was formed to house our inspiration. Crack, we have separation. The air that flows through brings respiration and whispers of knowing and life's inclinations. The earth was silent. Yet movement from within, water unfolds, carrying in the spirit of life and all it holds. Arise, the bacteria and fungi, as they start to multiply, spreading far and wide their mycelium web. Water nurtures their intent. This was the dawn of the mycelium. The web began not as woman and man, but as every strand. And as life came out of the ocean and on to the land, from this time evolves us to man. The dream once dreamt by life, filled with intent, every elemental and element, every aspect of life's creations, of north, south, east, and west, undine, salamander, sylph, and gnome, every mineral and vibration ever known. Sister and brother to all that has ever been, the whisper of the fungi in my memory within me, every thought and knowing, every dream had chosen now as part of its becoming, as woman, as man, as earth, now balanced. Life is expanding. The soil is fertile. We got fresh water, man. What a hurdle. The water is filtered by the minerals of the earth. The water is structured by the sun of the sky. The one living system, co-created by you and I. Divine intelligence embraced by water. The womb of life held by water, giving life when our mother breaks that water. Life began with the holy water. Eternal connections, one infinite web. The one living system began its intent.
Ooh. That was intense.
Oh. Yeah, so that was a co-creation, that poem, between me and Carrie Taylor, who's the author of the book One Living System, an exploration of life's sacred language and our collective journey. And so I met her 2.5 years ago on a Farmer's Footprint online community. I was doing one of my most popular presentations, Eating USDA Organic is Not Enough. And started talking afterwards. And me and her and a bunch of other folks started meeting up. There's about 5 of us at the beginning, every Thursday for 2 hours for the last 2.5 years. And we were studying that book and that philosophy, which is basically just the indigenous philosophy of treating all of life as sacred, and we're all connected, and treating, Mother Earth as a living entity. Death is not the end. It's always a rebirth. We are timeless souls. These are things that the indigenous people know deep in their bones and their DNA, and that's what's helped them thrive for thousands of years. So she married a indigenous man out in Australia over 30 years ago and learned from the elders,
Mhm.
and this was her gift. Forward, all the learnings she got from the indigenous elders. And so I've been really blessed to have her as a mentor the last 2.5 years. And that's really when my music started sprouting again, because I used to rap back in high school, and then I got really sick and then stopped for about 7 or 8 years. And then, I picked it up again once I had this deeper purpose behind it. And so I weave all that philosophy in my music.
Mhm.
And I got, a music video coming out here in a couple months or so called One Living System,
Mm.
uh, to help,
Beautiful.
promote her philosophy, her book, and our nonprofit. Um,
Mhm.
so we have our second annual event down in Virginia. One of our colleagues, Derek, has it organized, and I've done a lot of the social media and online stuff. Co-create in Loudoun County, amplifying Indigenous women's perspectives.
Mm.
So we have Dr. Lila June coming in, who's like one of the number one Indigenous rights leaders in the globe. She's a rapper as well, and a singer, and a guitarist, songwriter, but she's also done a TED Talk on Indigenous philosophy. It's got like 800,000 views. So we got her
Amazing.
flying in. So I'm super stoked for that. And then we have two local Indigenous women. We're going to have like a panel discussion, and also have like native dancers coming in, some drummers.
Mhm.
I'm going to be doing my thing, spoken word and rapping, and we're
Yeah.
just going to be a big party. So that's April 12th. We're doing like a healing house party. And then April 13th is when we're doing that panel discussion in more of a formal setting, but also a lot of fun too. We're going to mix in music and art and food and everything else. So that's what lights me up the most, is using my voice to give a voice to those people that didn't have as many opportunities, you know, as me growing up. Although I came from, my mom was on welfare, when I was young, a single mother on welfare, at least the first 8 years, bunch of
Mhm.
boys coming in, abusing us both mentally, physically, sexually.
Mhm.
So I went through a lot as well, but still there's, these different groups of people that have been suppressed. And so just bringing everybody together and helping people remember that we're all one.
Absolutely. And I really want to highlight the importance of using our voice in an intentional way. I mean, that's what this podcast for me is all about, as well as sharing the gems and diamonds of our stories and the darkness that we've gone through to bring light to situations that need them. And if it gets big enough, then I'm able to focus on using this platform and the energy that goes in and out of these conversations and relationships, and the web that's being connected and reinforced, um, brings that energy out to people that are really in need of it, from the things that we get to enjoy in America, like sitting down and doing a podcast like this, and how I could be having to go walk miles for my daily water right now.
Yeah.
And like simple things like that that can give us perspective on the things that we go through in the day to day. And I think that as a writer and artist myself, I find that my service through the work of sharing those feelings and that art that comes in and through me, um, is that ability to connect more deeply, because it's coming like straight from my heart and whatever I end up creating.
Mm.
And I just wanted to ask, where does that like fire to create come from in you? Like, where did you discover that drive initially to start creating and putting yourself out there and like pushing into that resistance? Because I feel like as soon as we start stepping into those artistic gifts, we're really triggering that shadow work process, even if we don't really realize it.
Yeah, it's interesting to think back in my childhood, because of the abundance of trauma that I experienced, I really started closing off more and more and more. And it was, this hard shell that I had most of my childhood up to like 17 or so. And, a huge ego, and I wasn't really open. I wasn't vulnerable at all. And my dad wasn't. So, that was learned, mostly from him. But, and there's a lot of great things that he gave to me as well, like discipline and other things. But I think at 17, when I did shrooms for the first time, it just blew my heart open. It blasted my ego out of the water. And, I had a death and rebirth, and I came back. And it was just a night and day difference. I was just so much more open to, meeting new friends and going out and creating. So I think it was right around that time that I started rapping back in high school. And I listened to a lot of Eminem,
Yeah.
Ja Rule, 50 Cent, all these gangster rappers. So a lot of the music back then for me was a lot of profanity and sex and everything else. But I overdid it on the cussing. But it was releasing, a lot of emotions, and it felt. But yeah, now it feels such a deeper purpose. And so really, psychedelics, and I've used those consistently since. I'm 33 now, but I'm getting to the point where I don't feel the need for those as much. And there's so many other modalities to access, our endogenous DMT and all these different chemicals that we're trying to grab, externally, through breath work and meditation, yoga, and different things. We can get, very similar experiences. And for me, it's like a deeper, integration. And so that's where I'm moving away from now. But that was really what opened me up, and I guess retrieved, some of my soul and some of these stagnant, parts of me that got locked up because of the trauma, and I had to close off and protect myself to make it through, to survive.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you find that when you're writing and creating that it gives you that opportunity to kind of like look at it in that 5D sense, like within your like third eye space?
Yeah, so I started meditating 10 years ago now, and that helped me integrate a lot of those psychedelic experiences. And I think that's a huge part of my writing practice and my creativity, because the ego comes in and gets all excited, and sometimes you can get carried away with some of the lyrics. So I always like to meditate on them, sleep, wake up the next day, listen to it again, whatever I created. I'm constantly like changing and editing it, and making it closer and closer to the full expression that I was looking for. And also getting feedback from family and friends and everything else has been huge as well. But yeah, it's really integral to have some sort of meditation practice, and both like a receptive meditation and an active meditation, because a lot of traditions, in the West, they only do active meditation, such as prayer, and then in the East, only receptive. And it's really a balance between the two that brings about that 5D manifestation. And it's really good to do, this receptive meditation first, to let go of all the mind chatter, get some of that subconscious, junk out of there. and then move into your manifestation, active visualization and imagination afterwards. And that's something I learned from Dr. Robert Gilbert, which he was my teacher for biogeometry. I've done foundations training and advanced training, and then I'm taking his essential teachings, spiritual science course right now as well, and been learning a lot about that. So, yeah, does that answer your question?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. It really highlights for me. I like how you're saying a receptive versus an active prayer practice, and I
Mm,
think it's really important to understand that there's a necessity for both, and like doing those devotional times of being in receiving versus creating, or pushing forward in active prayer or active intention, like affirmations, things like those things. And having both of those integrated into my meditation practice is like really what changed all the things for me
mm,
in my embodiment practices. um, I dealt with a lot of I needed a lot of reprogramming because I went through some really gnarly therapy situations and narcissistic tactics. And then I also worked in the jails and did a tour in Afghanistan. And so I had all those very like deep, super intense traumas
mm,
built into the system.
mm,
So I needed to do a lot of more of the active, intentional reprogramming for a long time.
mm,
But what I learned really early on, and what's served me really well in my meditation practice, is that combination of both. Like I learned through Save a Warrior this practice. It's 15 minutes. They call it warrior meditation. There's 3 phases to it, and you do it in 5-minute increments. And the first one is doing finger taps. So it's to get that monkey mind to quiet down and get your body on a visceral feeling.
mm,
So you're doing finger taps and breathing. And then the second 5 minutes, you're doing ava. So ava, like intentional breathing, following the breath in and out. And then the last one is the body rests, and you're allowing the mind to have the thoughts come up and visualize like the stream, and the bubbles are going on the leaves and they're going down the stream in a way, and you're just like clearing the mind and allowing it to flow. And I found that practice, for a repetitive time of just doing that one with those 3 phases, was super transformative for me very quickly, and then allowed me to progress into some deeper meditation and transcendental meditation very quickly.
mm.
What did your first couple practices like look like, and how did you initially find the need to add that into your practice? Like what was going on in your life where you're like, I need to be able to quiet the mind? And was it art, or was it the things going on in your life, or how did that
Mm.
practice really solidify and need to be integrated into your life?
Yeah, so I read Be Here Now by Ram Dass. I
Mhm,
think that's around 11 years ago. And I loved his story because he also did psychedelics and then moved towards, yoga and meditation.
mhm,
And so it really resonated deeply with me, and especially Maharaji's, story and everything. And I had a really strong urge to meditate after reading that book. And I still, we have a lot of resistance, so it took a while. But I remember the first time was me and my 2 older brothers, Randy and Ronnie. We went to the Japanese Cultural Center in Chicago, and they had one day a week, I think it was Thursdays, where it'd be a community meditation, about 30
mhm,
minutes. And this was the Japanese Zen practice.
Okay.
So just a completely receptive meditation. And they really encouraged, no movement of the body, getting your, back straight. So, sitting on the cushion and slightly tilting, and maybe, counting up to 10 until you start thinking about some random thought, and then start back up at 1 and see if you can get up to 10. You usually can't when you're first starting. Or tune into your senses and just like, hearing cars outside and smells and feeling, and just kind of tune into the present moment. And so it was just this receptive practice is where I was introduced. And um, yeah, after that, I tried a bunch of different practices, but the one that really escalated my progress would be Dr. Joe Dispenza.
Mm.
So his book Becoming Supernatural just blew me away, and that was April of 2020, shortly after the pandemic started.
Mm.
And and I was just like, yeah, on a rocket ship. It was mind blowing just to get into that, space of gratitude, feeling gratitude for these future, visions and desires that I wanted. And, I would get up to 45-minute, meditations, and eventually you don't even want whatever you're trying to get, in this, because you just have so many good feelings, endorphins and dopamine and everything
Yeah.
rushing through you. And so you just get this deep peace and contentment. And he says that's when usually the magic happens, when you stop, that wanting and grabbing, and you get in that place of gratitude, like you already have it, and
Yeah.
it calls it to you. So I was doing that um, like every day, and there would be these deep healings, traumas that would come in. For instance, like, I got in a really bad car crash back when I was 21 or so. I was
Mhm.
drinking, smoking. I just got out of a 5-year relationship, my high school sweetheart, and partying a bunch, and hit up my friend, and he couldn't go party. So I went out by myself, and I was dancing and partying till like 3 a.m. by myself, having a grand time, and then left and was driving home. And there's a spot where I found out later, I was reading Slim Sperling's book. Um, he's the founder of the Light Life technology, this energy science, which I tested with biogeometry, and I'm a little skeptical if it's 100%
Okay.
healing, but just we'll talk about that later. But that's what's great about biogeometry. You can actually measure other energy tools and energy modalities, and
Mhm.
see how it really affects it. But anyways, I found out there was this negative Earth grid line, where all these crashes would happen. And so I was really intoxicated, driving late at night. And as soon as I hit that grid line, I just blacked out. And so I woke up to the car shaking. I was going about 65 miles per hour. The car was shaking, and I was off into the grass, and I had no clue what was going on. And I was actually going through a period of questioning God. I had my brothers that were intense atheists at the time in
Mhm.
college, and they were kept, ramming information down my throat. And I was kind of questioning, but in this moment, I had, there was only one thing to do. It was to pray. So I slammed the brakes as hard as I can, grabbed both of the steering wheel on each side, and just start praying, please God, 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 please God. And I slam into trees. The car flips on its side. The car was totaled. It got crushed into the front, and it stops, and I like, look around, and there's literally not one scratch on my entire body. Car's totaled. And by the grace of God, I was alive, and I left everything there, like my phone there, and there was, weed in there and everything. And I just started running. I ran like 3 miles to my aunt's house, and ended up sleeping there. But yeah, it was like, once I sat down, in silence, and started letting go of all the constant, we're just bombarded with information from everywhere. Then we can start to process all this stuff. And the feeling I got was, I there was a sense of not being worthy of being alive, because
Mhm.
this huge mistake I made, and just shame.
Mhm.
Uh, and after that meditation, I was just crying and crying when I got this feeling that I did deserve to be alive, because I didn't lose my faith. And I was using, Dispenza's technique there. And that's how I really saved myself. And with, God, and we're all one, we're all God, we're all, our higher self. Just what we're moving towards. We're all walking each other home, like Ram Dass said. And so
Mhm.
there was just so much gratitude, for myself for not losing faith. And there was a sense of completion in that mistake, let's call it. But obstacles are just, opportunities for us to grow. And that's the mindset that I've always had from a young age. And so I'm very grateful that, all of the, bad stuff, quote unquote, happened, because it's just helped me grow so much over the years.
Yeah, I absolutely love that perspective, because that just points all the way back to our intention today of being in heart coherence and heart centeredness, and that's really what the whole practice that Dr. Joe is guiding us towards, this gratitude, heart centered experience. Um, and I got turned on to his work very early on, um, and and it's absolutely transformative when you're able to sit in those meditative states and look at the trauma that you've been through and be like, how can I be grateful for every single piece of that? And then work to a point where you feel that in your body.
Mm.
And when I started to feel that, especially like going through divorce and being in a very challenging co-parenting situation, that we don't see the world the same, and that's why we're divorced. And the things that I have had to do to heal through plant medicine, and just the choices I've needed to make of moving away from situations and following the call that God whispers in my ear, the goddess is whispering on my heart.
Mm.
Um, People don't quite understand that when they see the totality of what I am broadcasting out and sharing about and being like, oh, I am microdosing, but I'm also very much talking about the Bible and God and how those things are available truths to be interpreted by us into our life.
Mm.
That whole thing of just having my own personal relationship with a higher power, and knowing that as long as I am keeping myself to like the golden rule of treating myself and others the way I want to be treated
Mm.
and living in heart coherence, it's like, wow, there's a lot of fucking magic that happens when I simplify it to those couple principles.
Mm. Yeah.
And the worthiness to feel like that. Um, Man, it's such a deep, crazy thing. Like sometimes people don't look at birth as a trauma that's a connection to the divine. Like for me, I was a C-section.
Mm.
So,
Yeah.
how is that programming within my life, because I wasn't able to enter the world even by myself.
Yeah. I was a C-section as well. And yeah, that has a huge impact on our microbiome. from a young age, because you
Great
get.
point. Yeah, please dive into the microbiome effects.
Yeah, so I've been a big fan of Dr. Zach Bush, who's an expert on the
Hmm.
microbiome. And the American Gut Project actually did a study that showed 10%, or the average American only has 10% of the biodiversity in their gut, and they're supposed to have like our full potential. Only 10%. That's how decimated it's gotten, and it's all connected to the soil. And so we've since 1972 really is when we introduced Roundup slash glyphosate, which is classified as an antibiotic, a water soluble
Hmm.
antibiotic, and started spraying that everywhere. And then about 1992, we greatly increased the use of it on our farms, so on our food. And you'll see in my presentation I did, Eating USD Organic is Not Enough. And I took this from Zach Bush and some of his work, and Stephanie Sneff has a great book, about glyphosate. But there's a huge increase in diabetes and dementia and all these different diseases from 92 up when we just start increasing the amount of glyphosate. And now I think it's 4 billion pounds per year across the globe that we spray it. And so every inch of the earth, I mean, it's one study showed we have this antibiotic, 85% of it in our water, 85% in our air and our soil. It's all over our food. We can't escape it at this point. So it's even more important to do, cleansing practices and detox practices, whatever it is, make breath work and running and working out, and eating, local foods from farms that preferably use regenerative practices. If not, then organic practices. But one of the big, you know, light bulb moments for me was these, organic produce items we're buying at Whole Foods, for instance, because they source a lot from these huge industrial organic farms. So there will be, a monoculture still, thousands of acres, just one crop, and that soil is not healthy. There's nothing in the organic certification that talks about building healthy soil. It's just don't use these chemicals.
Hmm.
And so that's what regenerative farming is, brings into the equation, and also building biodiversity, bringing in pollinators, a lot of diversity of crops. If you're using cattle, you're holistically grazing them, and you're also sequestering carbon and reversing climate change. So you're building nutritious food that brings the medicine back into the food. So you're healing people, you're reversing chronic disease, and you're also reversing climate change. And so it just blew me out of the water when I found out, about this about 4 years ago from Zach Bush first, and then he turned me on to Kiss the Ground. And so I took their soil advocate course
Hmm.
about 4 years ago now. And after that, when I started public speaking through Toastmasters International, which is a nonprofit that helps
Hmm.
people build leadership and public speaking. And so the microbiome is so important. And if we can build healthy soil, it all starts there, and then you have healthy plants, healthy animals, healthy humans, and healthy earth.
Yes.
Yeah. But
100%.
I kind of trailed off there. So the organic produce that you're buying at Whole Foods, for instance, if it's imported from California, Mexico, Florida, apples from Washington, generally these are huge industrial organic farms, and the nutrition's not going to be any better. They're going to use less toxic pesticides. So I do, buy these types of items, but just know that the nutrition's not going to be much better. And you still want to source from local farms as much as possible to bring that medicine into your food. And it's just one thing people don't know a lot when they're, buying organic food, is not all organic foods the same. It's been, that certification's been greenwashed, and that's the whole reason we had to create a whole new movement called regenerative. So yeah, that's a huge point to make about the microbiome.
Yeah, big time. And from my whole journey, I've had a ton of issues. I was born in 93,
Mm,
and I've had a ton of issues with microbiome and like gut issues and hookworms and like the whole onslaught of all the things. I grew up in California, and then now we're realizing like how much fluoride's in the water, and then going in the military and getting exposed to all kinds of different things. Now knowing the effects of water bottles, plastic water bottles that are left out in the sun. Like when I was deployed, that was all the water
mm,
was like crates of, 12 packs of water that are wrapped in plastic, wrapped in another layer of plastic, and sitting out in 105 heat or more, just baking the toxins into the water that you're supposed to drink. And then you're supposed to be trying to function at like your most peak adrenaline states to try and survive. Um, it's just a wild thing to look at the world from that 10,000-foot view of the effects of these chemicals and the um, just kind of trickle down of not giving a fuck about the environment, really. Because if
yeah.
it started with a heart for the environment, then at the top, in our government officials and the people that are making these policies and decisions and checking the boxes and signing their names on things, um, that are affecting the masses,
Mm,
if their heart was in a different place, that would show, and the fruits of that labor would be something we would be talking about rather than all the disease that's been created and chaos and uh, opportunities for big pharma to um, farm energy in the form of money through us. Like, it's just really interesting that when you start pulling those strings on the rabbit holes just from your own inner journey, like how that expands your perspective to the greater problem that we're dealing with.
yeah. And it all stems, from the separation, from nature and separation from source. And, we've all been born into this system of greed and power and separation and colonialism and capitalism. And then we've been taught that this is the only way.
Hey,
Oh,
that was you.
yeah.
Titan.
Your dog knows. Yeah,
Oh
more
man,
cats.
I
Yeah,
know.
yells at greedy capitalists.
Sorry. I know. I'm in Santa Cruz right now too, so I'm sure that there's plenty of people that agree with me. Titan, you gotta chill, dude. Sorry
Yeah,
about that, guys. He thinks
and
that he's a guard dog.
yeah, I got a boxer as well. We're doing
Nice.
joint custody, so I don't have him
Okay.
right now. But yeah, so that's really what our nonprofit, is looking to do is
Yeah.
connect people back to their sacred self and feel, that connection to all of life and
Mhm.
know that there is an abundance of resources. Know that we're all connected, and it's throughout time, even back in Greece, there used to just be philosophy, and then eventually we brought in science. But before science was even here, philosophy helped run the world, and then we
Mhm.
got obsessed with science. And so, really, just taking it back to basics and natural law, and that's something Zach Bush just released. His nonprofit started that up called the Institute of Natural Law, which is really the same mission as us with the One Living System, helping
Mhm.
people connect back, to that principle, of ethics and morals that's universal. It's ingrained into our essence. We
Yes.
our birthright. And when the Declaration of Independence was created, there was, divine law and there was natural law. And we worked with the indigenous nations when we were creating this, and we brought natural law in, and then somebody's like, oh well, we also need divine law. But once we brought divine law in, then it's like, well, my God, says this, my God says this, and then that, started to create this uh, friction there. But ultimately, there's all, like you said, this golden rule, this natural law that's universal to all of
Mm-hmm.
life. And so, yeah, it's super exciting just to feel, the resonance when I started out studying this philosophy, because I was I was married, you know it's 2.5 years ago when we got married, and I actually started studying this month before, and we did 6 months, 2 hours every Thursday for 6 months, and it started getting deeply ingrained. And I started doing some of those poems, spoken word, and that helped bring in that frequency even deeper.
Mm-hmm.
And then the truth was just so hard to look at. Like you said, me and my ex-wife just looked at the world just two totally different ways. And
Mm-hmm.
one way is not better than the other, and that was the deepest learning for me, was accepting that the materialistic worldview is not necessarily bad, because the universe has polarity, and there's no light without the dark, and
Mm-hmm.
all different things. So there was a deep acceptance of her, and that's when I could finally let her go, and continue on this mission. And it was so difficult because everybody around me, um, was questioning my decision around one living system and the divorce. And so, like, everybody close to me was questioning it, and I just felt like so isolated at the time.
Mm-hmm.
But I had my team, the one living system, and everything else, and other friends, and my mom never wavered. She's always a goddess, given
Mm-hmm.
unconditional love. But yeah, there's just this deep knowing that we can make it through all of these hardships we're going through right now. And I honestly feel like I'm on heaven on earth the majority of
Mm-hmm.
the last 2 years, when I'm in conscious community, and people are just so um, working together, and reciprocity, and everything else. Fit for service was what really deepened it for me, especially at the Soul Rising camp
Mm-hmm.
out there, when we were camping with everybody, uh,
Mm-hmm.
living off the land, composting, shitting in buckets, taking it to the compost, building everything, and then kind of like the Burning Man vibe, and making sure to take it with us. And so it's so beautiful, that seed that was planted there, and it's continued to sprout, and spread, and um, yeah, there's so much confidence in the future.
Mm. Now, how do you see that mission spreading, like where you're at right now? Like part of this podcast for me is to, deepen those connections, and that our ability to co-create together this story that we're writing, new, fresh, especially with this the eclipse coming up. Like, it's such an opportunity to clear out the old and start this new story fresh, like,
Mm.
clean canvas. um this heaven that we are really dreaming it into manifestation, and the reality, and the 5D, the new earth, like, um so how do you, in your day-to-day, shine your light in such a way that it is role modeling, and being you're being the person that you want to experience in the world? How
Mm.
does that look for you in your day-to-day?
Yeah, so everybody is my guru. And
Mm.
that's what I learned from Ram Dass. And so I'm not better than anybody, no matter how much spiritual materialism that I feel my ego likes to attach to the amazing spiritual revelations and think that I'm enlightened. There's actually a book by Chogyam Trungpa called "Cutting Through Spiritual Materialism," which I love. I've read it after about 5 years of meditation. I read it, and it rocked my ego, and then I just read it again. I'm in the middle of it right now.
Mm-hmm.
I felt a desire as I started to study some of the star systems and our relatives out there,
Yeah.
Arcturians and Palladians and Andromedans, and then you can get kind of airy fairy and whatnot, but it's always bringing it back to here, to the present moment, which is what matters the most. But for me, continuing to release these feelings of shame, guilt, and fear that might be, from my ancestors, that I need to continue to let go of. And that's what these great moments of, the eclipses and everything else, and knowing that this, affects us. We're all, it's not only one living system on Earth, but all of the universe. We're all affecting each other, the planets and the stars. And so I actually got deep into astrology the past 2.5 years since and that's part of her book too. Carrie talks about astrology in her book.
Mm-hmm.
She did my first chart reading, but actually Pam Gregory, I love her book, Co-Creating with the Secret Language of the Universe. And so she studied and healed people and did sessions on astrology for about 35 years or so, and then finally had this epiphany. It's like, wait, this nodal axis has a lot of importance and nobody talks about it.
Mm-hmm.
And so the south node is the strengths that you came into this life from, and you brought them from past lives. And then the north node is kind of your soul purpose and your
Mm-hmm.
soul's evolution, what you're moving towards. And so that was huge for me. That was just 6 months ago. I read that. And, my south node is in Leo and my north node in Aquarius. And
Mm-hmm.
so I'm really good, public speaking and being in the spotlight. But, I can get, especially when I was younger, enamored with being in the spotlight and being the center of attention. And really my soul's development is how can I use, that strength for the collective and, humanitarian efforts. And
Mm-hmm.
also the Aquarius is ruled by Uranus, which is about challenging the status quo, and being different and whatnot. So that's always been like deeply ingrained in me. So it just feels really good to look back on life to confirm some of those truths, and then also moving forward, just that knowing. And everybody's different. Somebody else might be flopped and they need to be the center of attention, and their whole life they haven't been the center of attention, and they need to push themselves and get more, into those scenarios. And that's the best way they can co-create with the secret language of the universe. And then my, midheaven comes into that as well, which is Libra, all about justice and fairness and balance, moving forward. And so it just makes so much sense that, that I'm, working, with Carrie and Derek and everybody else and on this mission. But yeah, really listening to my body, which is our subconscious. So I'm in yoga teacher training right now, and I've been doing yoga about 7 years, but I've been getting really deep into the practice. And I was doing it every, at least once a day for the last few months. But then I just cranked it up to 2 per day, one in the morning, one at night, in roughly around an hour. But there's all these different tension and stresses and pains. This is all in my subconscious, in my mind, in my energy that's manifesting into the physical. And so sending love to that and showing awareness to it, you can pray to it as you're doing yoga, and getting all those kinks out. And for me, really the nighttime one is the one I added on that's made a big difference. Because I always like to eat big dinners and I like to eat late night snacks and stuff. So it's nice to get the chakras all aligned, and then get that digestive system pumping. That way, when
Mhm.
I'm sleeping, I can focus on whatever it is we focus when we're asleep. There's all sorts of fun stuff we're doing uh,
Mhm.
out there in the universe and the other realms and dimensions. And I just feel like, yeah, just more balanced and restored throughout my days. The last couple weeks that I've cranked it up, so that's been very helpful. And another big thing about the book, the secret language of life. Are we listening to the signs, the symbols, um, you know, tuning into the trees, the wind, the elements? There's a guy, John, that can talk to plants. He was an organic farmer for 20 years, and he didn't realize it. And
Mhm.
all of us are subconsciously interacting with plants and animals and everything else. But then we
Mhm.
can consciously make more of an effort, and we can do that with our ancestors as well, and receive guidance. Um, but yeah, are we feeling more? The big issue right now is being too in our heads and thinking. Can we feel more like the animals and the plants and the rest of life, how they operate? That sense,
Mhm.
sensing organ and resonance.
Yeah, absolutely. That's where a lot of my work has been lately, is in the proprioception and the inner technologies. And just like you're talking with your yoga practice of sending love to certain areas, mine just like looks a little bit different because I'm doing jujitsu. And so my self love is having to push through the pain of making sure that my muscles relax so that I can create art out of the movement that I'm trying to accomplish and the artistic form that I'm chiseling out of my ability to uh, move through space using my primal power of the body. Like that's where a lot of my work is coming in with the darkness and primal play
Mm.
and like a static dance. Did
Oh,
Fit for Service? You went to the ecstatic dance, correct?
yeah, yeah, it was amazing.
How was your experience of that? Because that's something that I really am like feeling called to like host and do things like that, as a projector and an Aries, uh,
Mm.
and Scorpio Libra. Like
Mm.
it's just it's just right up my alley to go full send with an ecstatic dance party. Um,
Mm.
so
Yeah,
I want to hear about your experience because I absolutely loved mine. So
oh,
how was that night for you?
so I'm a projector as well.
Nice.
But yeah, we that was when we dressed up for Halloween, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
if you remember, I I ended up hurting my rib. I like bruised my rib by breakdancing too hard at the ecstatic.
At the aesthetic dance?
Yeah, and
Nice.
I almost didn't do my performance. I mean, I was practicing before, and
Oh.
as I was like singing, it was hurting. I was like, man, I don't know if I can do this. And so yeah, it was so much fun. And I remember Nikki Dorn was wearing. She was a priestess, but it looked like the devil. And then I met her, and we didn't really know each other before that. We just saw each other. We're like, ah, and it came up and started screaming like the most creepy, intense, laughs like a priestess devils would, and a Mad
Yeah.
Hatter. And we were just, oh, it felt so good to just release that.
Just
And I
straight
remember like
shamanic release.
we did it like 3 or 4 times.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd be dancing, running around, break dancing. I'd go back to her and we'd scream in each other's eyes, like looking right in each other's eyes. Like, oh man, yeah, that was such a blast. It was so much fun. Oh,
Oh, that night was amazing. I think that it's the passion and the play that gets just the absolute space to release out.
mm,
Like I've talked to so many people that I met at Fit for Service, and like I would have never guessed the life that they were living back home. Like it didn't matter at all. I don't care what you look like what your creed is, like you're showing up and just going full send in this space. Everybody's giving each other like permission to just send it, and then the energy that is released, like, oh my god, like just going back to it in my head right now is like getting the kundalini rising. Like I'm like, oh shit. um and and man, like talk about the inner child that gets just space to just freely funk out, and like the uh the energy that's released from driving your hips around, and like the break dancing, and just like the playing in your body, like the feeling from your toes all the way to your fingertips, like all of that is just so alive.
Mm.
um have
Yeah.
you done any like tantra practices or anything like that, or was like that your first ecstatic, like labeled ecstatic dance that you went to?
So I was doing ecstatic dance. I have done Tantra, but I'll talk about the ecstatic dance first.
Hmm.
Like back, 10 years ago or so when I was still drinking a lot, what would usually happen is like we'd all be drinking at the bar and then I would run off and just start dancing. And then it would be like 1 a.m. and they're like, oh, we're going to go home or go somewhere else. I'm like, no, I want to keep dancing. And so I would stay out by myself till like 3, 4 a.m., close the place down because I didn't want to stop dancing. And so
Yeah.
this would happen every weekend, for years, and until I, slowly stopped drinking that much.
Yeah.
But I didn't realize what, was happening there, but I was releasing a bunch of emotions. And I always love, moving my hips and, doing, kind of a feminine type, dance as well. And that's
Yeah.
really, the eagle and condor prophecy is all of our, mission really is to balance that masculine and feminine in each of us, no matter what
Mhm.
your gender is. And so there's so much healing going on that I didn't realize at the time. So I was doing it before, but then when I found out, this was like a practice and I could do it, sober and reach, the same states, actually even deeper states. Like
Yeah.
I went to a ecstatic dance recently here in Minneapolis and completely sober, but it felt like I was rolling, at one point. And I used to, do a little bit of MDMA back in the day.
Mhm.
But yeah, just to get to that, heightened state, just being completely sober, I love, yeah, ecstatic dance so much. It just so feels so good to release all those different, emotions and shake it off.
Oh, yeah. I'm all about the shamanic releases, and the heaviness and break-in density and all that fun stuff, and, um, yeah, I ended up on the stage, like, and you're just in a static state, and you're, like, eye contact with somebody else, and just like, "Ah!" Like, just letting it
Yeah.
go, and it's like, you know, like like, what that feeling is because you've done it, like,
Yeah.
and, really, I'm, like, kinda selling this to people because I think more people should do it, as I'm, like, called to do it, so,
Mhm.
um, to hold that space, and just, like, dude, I always had great friends that were like dancers, and uh, all these other like feminine quality type of things that gave me the permission to step into that. Whether that was like a girl I was dating that got me into yoga, like it created permission for me to just be like, okay, I'm gonna try this thing. I'm gonna be open minded and see what happens. And then the results of just stepping through that discomfort into a space like you don't know anybody, but you're just trusting the process, and then the results start coming through, and you're like, wow, I want more of this.
Mhm.
um I think that that's like really the gem that I've gotten out of stepping into the fit for service community, because I came out of nowhere. Like, no, like my spiritual background was like very small. It was more about like veteran suicide work and like going through really dense traumas and stuff.
Mm,
And having these tools available to me previously, and like knowing that I was intentionally trying to release density from some of the habits that I was doing, I would have leaned into those habits more,
mm.
and then I would have been like, oh, hey, I need to keep doing this because this is improving my life and allowing me to continue to do the things that I love to do, because I go and I have this intentional ecstatic dance, this intentional like party, raw, fun, passion play release, that allows me to function better in the day to day, because the density is not going to go away, because it's the human experience that we're going through here.
Yeah. Yeah. And your inner child, like you mentioned, gets a chance to express itself and have fun. Because when we were kids, everybody danced.
Yeah.
This is just filters that we put on to fit in with society. And the majority of the time, I like to close my eyes during ecstatic dance and just really feel it. And I'm not worried about, how I'm looking at all. I'm not worried about anybody
Mhm.
else, just get my own little space. And so, yeah, if anybody's looking to try it, try that out. And, it's a really powerful practice. But you mentioned Tantra.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I have explored that. So, me and my ex wife did some non monogamy towards the end of our
Mhm.
relationship, and that opened me up to some different ways of being and some different practices like tantra. I remember us doing soul gazing during that time, and
Mhm.
that was a little far out for her, but I convinced her. I remember to do one session, and it was really powerful. And so that was like 4 or 5 years ago or so when I first started practicing a little bit, but really the book Sex Shamans by Kamala Devi, when I read that uh,
Mhm.
about 2 years ago, right around the time I was getting a divorce, that really opened me up to the practice a lot deeper. And what blew my mind the most was I spent my entire life having orgasms and the entire time I had no really intention. It was more of just I want to feel good, like I just
Mhm.
want to release and the pleasure. But this is the
Mhm.
most powerful energy of the universe, the most powerful force that brought us into this universe, and we can harness that. And so all of the meditation I had done and the manifestation that I had done, it felt like it was 10 times more powerful when I started to use this sexual energy for
Mhm.
manifestation and setting intentions for my orgasms.
Mhm.
And so it could be as little as like I want to love myself more. I mean, that's one I love doing. It seems like the entire next day I'm doing everything for that I'm supposed to do for my body. But then you can bring like two people together and have the same intention
Mhm.
and release that to the ether. And that was like a full week that I was feeling it. And I haven't actually had that scenario too much. Most of my practice so far has been solo in that space. But this year, I'm definitely calling in a sacred union. I feel it very deep,
Mhm.
close. It's coming, but I'm not worried about it. I'm not, grasping for it at all. Uh, Still, focused on myself there. But yeah, the one of the biggest practices that transformed the way I felt in my balance of the masculine and feminine is the inner marriage. And so this sacred masturbation ceremony, where you might light some candles, some incense, have a nice setting, and you um, as you're pleasuring yourself, you're visualizing your divine masculine and, what big muscles, what you're wearing, how you're walking,
Mhm.
how you would talk, and all those things, your appearance. and then you would imagine your divine feminine, no matter what, if you're a man or woman, and what would you wear there, and how would you walk and talk, and then you basically go on a date with yourself,
Mhm.
and then you go through the foreplay and everything else, and then fuck yourself, and it feels so fucking good. You have and then on top of it, you can set the intention of self love for that
Mhm.
particular orgasm, and then you can be doing the intermarriage, and it just really amplifies the self-love so much. And there's parts of me when I go into that divine feminine, I'm getting fucked by myself, that had never been expressed in my life, and
Yeah.
it was a weird feeling. um, and so there was so much healing going on there. On we talk about the internal family systems work, all these different parts of me that have been suppressed and whatnot are being turned back online, and
Mhm.
integrating back into my full soul essence and becoming whole again.
I couldn't say that any better. The sacred sexuality has been a huge focus for me. I know I shared in our dreamers group a little bit. I had some repressed stuff come
Mm,
up, and I was like asking for some prayer and just some people to hold space for it that I knew could deal with it. And um, I won't dive into that so much, but it's from that particular thread of wounding within my life that sacred sexuality has become a very important piece for me. And I dealt with Crohn's disease and a lot of issues with the anus, and I just had surgery a couple weeks ago, like we talked about, um, on my anus area, perianal issues, um, and a lot of that was physical trauma of having doctors having to check the area all the time and having wounds in that area and having to be a very masculine man as a deputy sheriff and a combat veteran leaning over a table to surrender energetically to this person that I really don't trust. And the energy that's created in these dynamics within the sacred sexual spots of our body, in these different facets of life. Like, we can accumulate trauma in so many different ways. It's not necessarily like a man getting raped by a woman, but it could be, through these medical processes where we're beaten down energetically and put in these positions with our body and with other people that we are not necessarily wanting to have to do that, but because of the norm or because the system or because of the thing that we need to step through the gate to get what we need on the other side, we're put in these positions to just do the thing, even if it's against what our body is like, fuck no, I don't want to do that. So sexuality for me, is exactly what you're talking about, of picturing that vibration of the other part of my soul that is out there.
mm,
And like, once I come home in my heart, then I know that that balanced state is going to put me in the 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 right place at the right time with the right person, and then it's going to be this magical story tale.
mm. Yeah.
And it all stems from self-love practices like you're talking about, of, hey, this is a devotion to myself, to my inner temple, my inner God, so that I can attract in my goddess on the other side.
Yeah. Yeah, I just did 10 and a half months of conscious celibacy, and that
Awesome.
was one of the most difficult
Whew.
things ever. Um, because as you know, because we both went through, sexual abuse when we were, younger. I mean, it just reclaim, that power,
Mhm.
our body, and just, set that intention. Like, no, I'm not, you know, even interested at all. And I'm just focused on myself for this time period. And, as I've entered back into the dating game, it's been also equally powerful to be more selective and reflective on some of these relationships that I've started, going on a date or two and seeing, red flags and backing up and saying, hey, I want to, continue this relationship as friends, but let's take a step back. I feel like we're moving, a little too fast.
Mhm.
And that's something in the past where I would just jump right in, you know, this, recent woman I was dating, I had all of these synchronicities, like this is a soulmate type feeling
Mhm.
for 2 weeks. Um, and, you know, then there were some red flags and I kind of, backed up and I was like, let's take it slow. And then thankfully I didn't get, sucked into that because that wasn't in alignment for me. But
Mhm.
it was really powerful to be able to hold those strong boundaries because that's something that I, haven't been able to do, for most of my life. And that's um, one of the, codependencies with my mom, really, that I inherited because I really helped her just as much as she helped me as we were, a single mom family on welfare trying to make it through. Um, and So there's a lot of that codependency and anxious attachment style that I
Mhm.
brought into my relationships. Um, but the practice of semen retention is also one of the most difficult. That's how I unlocked my repressed sexual abuse from my childhood was a
Mhm.
6 week semen retention, and then I was doing, you know, sacred sexuality practices and moving the energy up like a microcosmic orbit,
Mhm.
uh, up my channels, up my chakras to, heart chakra. You can get that sexual energy up to your heart chakra, and then you can send it out. And there's, in that book, Sex Shamans, there's miraculous healings of people, masturbating every day, sending it up to their heart,
Mhm.
transmute and send it to like their organ that needs help. This girl was going to have surgery
Yeah.
like the next week. She masturbated 8 times a day and healed it. When she went back, there's like, oh, you don't even need surgery anymore. Um, but the 6 week semen retention, and I was channeling that sexual energy up to my pineal gland, and then asking for, I didn't know what, but I just deeply felt like I had some sort of, trauma that I needed, help healing, and just kept praying and praying before bed, and actually had like a past life vision, which all my plant medicine ceremonies, I've never had such a clear vision like this before, where I shot out of my body right before sleep and I was chanting at it like an Egyptian temple wall, like the most important prayer of my life. And I got into Islam last year. I actually participated in Ramadan. I did 30 days of no food and water during daylight. It was the most intense spiritual journey
Oh, I
ever.
would that's a whole nother podcast. I'd love to
Yeah,
dive in those. I don't
yeah,
wanna open up too much. We've got about, like, 10 minutes left, so
10 minutes. Okay.
yeah.
But yeah, it was this past life, and it felt like I was Hebrew or Arabic, and I was chanting for like 7 or 8 seconds. It just sucked
Yeah.
back into my body. Like, whoa. And it made a lot of sense with this other um, woman that I was seeing at the time that was Muslim, and we had some past life stuff. But, anyways, I kept praying for healing, every night. And then, the next morning, got this answer about this sexual abuse that was repressed for 32 years. And it just happened real similar, to you. It's just like it rocks your world. You're kind of like in denial. You don't really know like how to work with this information that you're receiving, because I received it. I don't know about you, but I didn't have any memories of it at the beginning. It was not until about 6, 7 months later, when I just started dating again, we were doing some tantric practices, getting the energy flowing, and then I
Mhm.
had a vision right before sleep, and that was my first memory that I've had so far. And that, it's been difficult to work with, and cried a bunch, a couple hours, and released some more there. Um, but to have the knowing and that answer come through, it's like a thought first thing as soon as you wake up, the thoughts like repeating. And
Mm,
that's a practice I've done a lot the last few years, is asking questions right before bed. Then I get the answer in the morning.
mm,
But I still resisted it and denied it and seeked so many external. I used biogeometry and confirmed it. I used muscle testing because you can actually do, you can heal timelines and trauma with biogeometry. That's something people don't
mhm.
know about because it's marketed as an environmental solution and for EMF radiation protection. But
Yeah.
there's a lot deeper that goes into that. So yeah, just very encouraging for people to explore their sexuality and different tantric practices, and that's why actually I made the rap called "Sex Magic," and I
Mm.
have a music video I did with my friend Josephine, who's a priestess, and so just a fun way to get some of that out there. That's on my Rumble, which is uncensored. Then I have like some of the other more vanilla stuff on my YouTube for those music videos.
Yeah.
But yeah, huge fan of Tantra.
Oh, that was such a beautiful rabbit hole that we just went down.
Yeah.
Yeah, I got really big into it when I was in Montana this last summer. I started reaching out to some sisters through Fit for Service, and I was like, "Hey, I feel like Tantra and sacred sexuality are calling my name. What do you? I don't know if you know Poppy. She's a priestess that does a bunch of tantric activations and sacred sexuality work. And so I was like, hey, what should I read? And so I got Urban Tantra,
Mm,
and I started reading through that, and it was just like going deeply into how um, these different woundings manifest through the chakras and how they work into our lives in different ways, whether it's through our speech or how our relationships go. And I really set the intention over the last year to just get every activation I can possibly get in whatever way the universe can give it to me so that I can be the wholest version of myself. And it was through some dating relationships that I was like, okay, I feel like I'm self-abandoning right now, and I feel like I've tugged on all these different chords and stuff,
mm,
um, and uh, and then all of a sudden it was just like this dream that came through, and then I journaled about it, and then I was like, okay, that just makes sense. Like in that moment, I was like that just the clarity on it was like, okay, everything in my body feels like this is a yes, that it happened. I'm gonna have to process it. And I probably wasn't like the most amazing person at processing it, but it was something that like I was like, okay, I just need to do what I need to do to release this out into the ethers and be done with it and integrate the lesson and then move forward. So it was like for me, it was like God prepared me for it the entire time. And God was like, I'm like, I'm not prepared, or I'm always prepared for the things that God is calling me forward to talk about. So it was like, oh, of course, it's childhood trauma. Like that's the key to this is we need to really pay attention to our inner child, childhood trauma, and how sexual trauma early on, sexual exposure to topics that
mm,
we shouldn't be talking about, which is a huge thing in our society right now. How
mm,
those are the things that I'm being directed towards speaking um, from my experience directly into because I have that knowledge from those classrooms.
mm,
Um, and now that we're coming to the close of our time here, um, I just want to thank Ryan for dropping in with me today and being flexible with our schedule. I had to reschedule because of some stomach issues the other day, as I am coming off a far too familiar cycle with opiates and antibiotics, and uh, and so. Just thank you so much for your flexibility and coming in with your full heart and knowledge and wisdom to share with the world. And Ryan's asked to finish us up with a 3-minute meditation. and that'll be the close of our podcast today. So Ryan, go ahead and drop us in and out.
Beautiful. Yeah, thank you so much for this space to unravel together, and really looking forward to continuing the nourishing relationship that we've started to develop more here recently. So yeah, thank you so much, brother. And let's take a few deep breaths. Inhale, put our hands on our hearts, get connected to our hearts and connected to Mama Gaia. Exhale. Inhale. Exhale. Inhale. Exhale. What is this time man has created of days and months and hours, all dated, in this linear time, contracted to be born and to die? We are redacted from nature, from our beloved source. And so from the beginning, we step into remorse. That moment, holding us from our truth, the trauma begins, ripped from our roots. Time clenched by the hand of man, denying us the divine plan, limiting us from our infinite expanse, all so we can reside within the human trance, thrown into a system of working for the man, from 9 to 5, our daily demand. Be born, live a life according to man's law, held by the constraints of time's claw. Told we have only this lifetime to achieve, only this lifetime to succeed, only this lifetime in which to become, only this lifetime, for then we are done. As if only this lifetime is all we have, as if only this lifetime is all we are, as if only this lifetime is all we had to create, as if only this lifetime is all there was to be. As we release the noose of this time constraint and reconnect to our place, we return to our limitless, infinite existence and find the path of least resistance, the path of infinite possibility, the joy of abundance and immortality as all that is, as the one living system, as a child of life, as a gift to behold. We are one in all, and this story must be told. For you nor I have limited time. We have more than this moment in which to expand, more than this lifetime as life's plan, more than this human form to evolve as, more than this monkey mind to console us. We are infinite. We are the universe. We are the minerals and the earth We are the trees. We are the birds and the bees. We are the rhythm, the beat, the dance, and the hum, the light, the clouds, and the universal. Be gone, time given only by man. Be gone, time, contraction, and remorse. I open to the time delivered by source.
Oh, so amazing. Thank you so much, Ryan. Everybody, soak in that vibration and frequency and take it in your heart wherever you go.
Mm.
This is Station 8 signing off.